Hi, Ken. It's good to see you too.
Hey Ken, is it okay if we bring you on as a on the video?
You're recording, Richard?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm recording Richard, and I'm recording Deirdre. And some of you are not old enough to remember a show called Romper Room, where this woman would hold up a magnifying glass that had nothing in it, and she would hold it up like this, and she'd say, and I see Johnny and Susie and Mary, and I see Peter and Ralph and Jennifer.
Paul. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they never said my name, and I used to cry because she never saw me.
Well, let me do the intro here. Welcome to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment, now in our 5th year, bringing you topics on the mind, body, spirit, and the tools and techniques to awaken your higher states of consciousness. I am Dr. J, your host, and my amazing co-host is...
Me.
Always a step above me, as you can see. Let me see if I can...
Moving out of the sun.
Alter the screen here. There, now we're side by side. Together, we bring you grounded metaphysics where the spiritual rubber hits the road, real-life teachings and applications that are pertinent and relevant to you. Here, you can breathe the fresh air of real consciousness education while avoiding the hype and fascination. We are all about assisting you to empower your life through the understanding of your true spiritual nature. So come aboard our beam of light and enlighten your load as we travel the wave of knowledge and wisdom for the next hour. So, how you doing, Deirdre?
I'm really doing well. I'm going through a huge spiritual growth in the last little while.
I see.
And it's very good. I mean, I'm learning a lot about myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm learning a lot about my chakras.
Generally, that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you learn what works and what doesn't work, and what doesn't work. And, you know, life is a series of processes. It's not just events, but it's like how we respond to these events. And, you know, today's topic is about the chakras. And, you know, it's something that I have been enamored with since the late 80s. Many years, 30 years now, right? And so every once in a while, I feel it's important that we refresh ourselves and we bring it around again. These shows, of course, are brought to you on Facebook. We also archive them on the Light News Institute page of YouTube. So if you missed today's show, you can always watch it again by downloading it on our YouTube page on Light News Institute. And by the way, our website is www.lightnews.org, lightnews.org. So today's show is March 1st. Woohoo! And yesterday,
happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I have successfully completed another orbit around the sun.
Dear Richard. Happy birthday to you. Can't get away.
Where's that mute button? So yesterday, I gave my second lecture at a place called Oasis Lifelong Learning Center. And it's for people who have reached a certain level of maturity in life and want to study other things. And so it offers these venues to people at a very inexpensive rate on incredible array of subjects. They publish a catalog, you know, every 4 months. And so I gave my first lecture about a month ago on past lives, karma, and reincarnation, but on yesterday on chakras, doorways to higher understanding. So I thought, gee, you know, it's been a long time on Light News Radio since we talked about the chakras. And our format today is not the same as Facebook Live. Now on Facebook Live, I know that people can chat and they bring up chat windows, and I know you can bring 1, maybe 2 people on. But Zoom is now our preferred platform because we can bring people on video. We have bandwidth to do so. They're easily archivable. There's just so many pluses to using Zoom.
And not only that, once they're recorded, we can post it to YouTube. We can post it to Facebook. Mm-hmm. We can put a link onto Twitter. It's wonderful to be able to use to our advantage the knowledge and the availability of the internet out there. And don't forget that, you know, even though we're recording this right now, when it is posted onto Facebook, dear listeners, you can share it, you can comment on it, you can send us emails with your concerns. We want to know what you have to say about any of the...
Yeah, and please do, because that's how we become more popular, more widely known. It's how people will connect with us, but it's also how we can connect with them. You know, one of the great things about the era in which we live, if this was 150 years ago, and you said, you know, I've heard about Tibetan culture. I've heard that, you know, there is teachings out there that I really want to partake in. So that, no problem. You would take a wagon train to the coast, then you take a steamship, and then you take a train, and then, you know, but nowadays you just simply get on the internet, and here we are. So we're living in an age where we can bring these teachings to us. However, there's still a lot of people that don't know what is beyond the biomedical model of the whole human being from a spiritual perspective. There's still a lot of people that believe the word spiritual and religion are the same thing. And
yes.
they are not.
They're not.
They are not the same thing. So
this... Can you add, before we get going, can you add, Sheila, that's Ken. Can you add them into...
Well, I can unmute Ken here, I think, or maybe he's muted himself.
He's muted himself, but I think he's now Sheila. I think you can...
Well, there's two.
He said he was changing computers, so I believe he is actually Sheila McDonald, and you can...
Well, there's actually both of them on here.
Oh,
okay.
I think he's using her computer.
Okay, but the point is, let me see if I can unmute him.
I thought you were going to pull him up.
But with Sheila, it just says Sheila. So Ken and Sheila are a couple from a place called Airdrie, which is just north of Calgary a little bit, kind of like a urban or suburban of Calgary. And they have become very dear friends and great supporters of Light News and Northern Light News. And so perhaps we can engage in a conversation about the chakras, which is today's topic. And, you know, I asked yesterday, we had about 35, 40 people in attendance yesterday. And I asked, how many of you know what chakras are? And, you know, it was very interesting. I would say 75% of the people there, these are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. 75% said they knew what they were. So I had prepared a handout for them to kind of go over some of the key points about chakras. But you know what one of the biggest keys is that you can know something like from one of these books, but it doesn't mean you really grasp what it is. It's like you can stare at an orange all day long, but until you bite into it, you really don't know. So chakras are just like that. It's the same thing. You can study the color, the keynote, the nervous plexus, the meridians that are connected to the chakras, but never really fully understand that these are conduits of consciousness. So we have 7 main chakras lined up along the column of the spine, going from the perineum, you know, where the legs join the body, to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. But these chakras, most people believe, are energy centers, because that's what they've been told, that your chakras are energy centers. And to an extent they are, but not to the extent that it's only energy, like gasoline is a form of energy, electricity, nuclear power, and so forth. These are forms of energy that we're very familiar with. And so a lot of people think, okay, just like religion and spirituality are the same thing, and that energy and chakras are the same thing, and they're not. So yes, chakras do convert a higher form of energy into the prana, or it's called chi, or it's called ki. It's known by many names, but that is the energy that goes through the meridians of your body, that if you went to an acupuncturist, let's say, that's what they would access to help you to be in healthy balance in your body, in your tissues, your organs, your bones, and whatnot. But chakras are much more than that. They affect the 4 archetypes of what it is to be a human being: the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional. So right there, we added 3 more components than just the physical. So it's not just energy for the body. It provides a conduit, a connection between the higher mentality, the higher emotions, the higher spirituality, and this physical level. So right then and there is where a lot of people put on the brakes. They say, well, now, wait a minute. You're saying that you have these energy centers that are really consciousness centers, and yet they are responsible as conduits to allow this flow to go through you. Hi, Ken. There you are, coming online.
Like I said,
So
there he was.
The answer is yes. And so the conundrum is chakras are not limited to time or space, but our bodies are limited to time or space. This is the place where many people have, rightly so, a lot of problems with what the chakras really are and how they work. How can you have 7 energy centers or consciousness centers up and down the column of your spine that are beyond time and space, and yet they're still localized in your body? How can that be?
Mm-hmm.
So the California Institute for Human Science, where I am lead faculty, and I'm also the chair of the board of directors there, is a graduate school and research center into the scientific verification of the spiritual body, so that it's about spirit and body, or as we like to say, mind, body, spirit connection. So we know scientifically that meridians and chakras exist, but again, it's like the orange example. You don't really get much out of this radio program if you're only listening to chakras from an intellectual level, because chakras are much more organic. They are live consciousness, and they're all on 24/7. I asked the audience yesterday, I said, how many of you are intuitive? And so, surprisingly, about 60% raised their hands. And I said, that's very good. However, you're all intuitive, because the chakras are conduits to higher states of being beyond space and time, but they're on 24/7. Chakras are never closed. They're never blocked. And so everybody's intuitive powers are on all the time, but like a muscle, they may not be cultivated, they may not be activated, but they're still working just fine.
I want to add to that, your lecture yesterday, since it completed, I've had 5 emails and 3 phone calls from people that are interested in coming and seeing you on Monday night. So a quick plug.
Oh, for free energy balancing.
Monday night at Healing Therapies in La Mesa off of Murray Drive. Dr. Jelicic will be offering free subtle energy medicine sessions, and you can certainly go meet him in person and check that out. Of course, check our website, www.lightnews.org, to see the calendar of events and know exactly what's going on. So just because we have Ken online with us, I'm going to, of course, put him on the spot. And I'm going to say to him, I want to hear those deep, hard questions that are always rumbling around in the mind. Because, after this last weekend of teaching, I found that we don't always ask the questions ourselves because we think that they're not important. But as soon as the question is asked, a half a dozen people in the room will say, I was thinking that, but I didn't know how to put it into words. Or I was thinking that, but I thought that question was too silly or dumb to ask. So Ken is on the spot for when the questions come up in his mind to ask them, because I know that the other listeners are also thinking and feeling, and just they're not on camera, and he is.
Well, it's interesting, Ken, because I'm seeing you on my screen 3 times now. You got 3 computers going?
Yep.
You do?
For the volume to work here, so. Okay.
Well, that's good. So, Ken, what is your understanding of spirituality, since Richard brought that up earlier?
That's a big question. It's not religion per se. That's a hard question to answer.
Aren't you the one with the hard questions?
Usually. It's supposed to be. Oh, spirituality is more how you look at everything in the universe and how everything is connected. Like, there's a lot more than just one religion. I think all the religions have some stuff that's right. And then there's people who practice whatever. So there's different things from all different aspects that all come together. And that's more than what the spirituality is, I think.
Good answer.
It's good.
Yeah. You know, because we each have our own idea of what spirituality means to us. And, you know, when we talk about the chakras as we are today, the chakras, as Richard teaches, emanate us here through the Ida, the Pinda, and the Sushumna into this dimension. And so when we're looking at spirituality, it really is, like you just said, Ken, it is that connection to everything. And it doesn't matter what spiritual path you are on, whether it is through a religious organization or through a metaphysical society or listening to Pem Chodra or David Wilcox or whatever. It is all about being able to connect to that inner light or that inner wisdom, what I call my inner Buddha, and to understand how that relates to everything that's going on in my life. What a great piece of that you've just put up, Richard, a great handout.
Yeah, well, this is what we used yesterday, and I found it to be very helpful because I like for people to be able to have something in their hand and they can go home with. And then, you know, I do bring these topics up and discuss them, but in an hour and a half, it's a bit much. So this gives them a chance to go over it. So the reason I brought this up is for the image on the right, because, you know, there's a lot of people that look at these images and they say, well, okay, I see 7 spheres of light. What does it mean? Well, we've given them names. You know, the root is at the base of the body where the legs meet the body. The second is the sacral, which is below the navel. The third is the solar plexus, which is above the navel. The fourth is the heart, of course. The fifth is the throat. The sixth is the third eye. The seventh is the crown. So most people's knowledge of the chakras is anatomical. You look at this picture and you assume that the heart chakra is green. We go into a metaphysical bookstore and we see some lovely paintings and images of the chakras, and quite typically, it's green for the heart chakra. But yet, if you read some of the ancient texts that are over 1,000 years old, some of the more popular texts might say, oh, yes. And the heart chakra is a beautiful scarlet color. That's not green. And so I asked the group yesterday that, you know, what color do you think the heart chakra is? Well, they all said green because that's all they know. That's all they've seen. And so it becomes a matter of perspective, because every chakra has its own unique intuitive function.
Yes.
And it's functioning all the time, no matter what your head is doing, no matter what you're thinking, your intuition is on. But because you and I all have perception, we all perceive differently. We hear differently, we see differently, we smell differently. So when someone is observing a chakra, like there's some very popular people in the world. There's Anodia Judith, right, who wrote about the chakras from a therapist point of view. There's Carolyn Mace, who wrote about the chakras from a medical intuitive point of view. There's me, who writes about the chakras from a spiritual consciousness, psychology, and energy medicine point of view. But our perspectives are different. And so when we observe the chakras, when we use our intuition to take a look at what we feel the chakras represent, we're going to have different perceptions.
Yes.
And so that's why when someone looks at this image on the right, it's a starting place. It's telling you, well, you know, there's 7 main chakras, and here's the name we generally give to them, and here's the color that is popularly given to them. but what they represent, how they represent, is best observed personally. And so this is where, as a person begins to develop their intuition, they start to perceive on a whole different level. You know, a great example, the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly.
Yes.
If the butterfly comes up to the caterpillar and says, well, you know, you're not going to need those 100 pairs of Nike shoes anymore, because you're going to have these things called wings. You're going to go through quite a change. So what's the caterpillar supposed to think? They're going to look at you like, sure, of course, but they don't know. So the reason I'm saying this to our listeners and our viewers is that when I was giving the lecture yesterday, I was saying, you know, the way to make this lecture more real and more organic for you is so that you know that the chakras are not some biomedical, functional, academic, intellectual thing. They are you and I on a much higher level of being, and they're on all the time. And as the chakras are awakened, they access you to much higher levels of awareness. But awareness is not limited to space or time. Awareness is not imagination. Awareness is not conceptual thinking. It's a state of being that we all possess. So this leads back to spiritual teachings, where the spiritual teacher tells you, well, you know, we live in oneness. There's no separation. There's only oneness. And so, you know, the average student is going, oh, yes. But your own personal voyage into the truth of your nature, that's what spirituality is. It's very intimate to each person, and each person is going to have a different perception.
And that's why I'm sorry, Ken, that I put you on the spot. It's a way of us showing that we each look at it on a different level, on a different understanding. Because for myself, my spiritual journey is very much when I look into myself and I pay attention to what's going on in my life. And then I look at the characteristics of the different chakras and what is being, as I call, turned on at this moment in time. I'm going through a lot of things right now with family and friends and whatnot. And so I'm really feeling very heart-centered as of the last little while. But being someone who is throat chakra, the teacher, or the one who, you know, really is the comprehender of the whole picture and whatnot, it's hard for me because I don't often sit in my heart as I have been. And so my perception on what is going on right now in the world is coming through a very different filter, I would say. And so it's really cool because spirituality to me has just grown into this whole new perspective on life right now.
And this is what led me to write books about this, because I developed a theory almost 30 years ago that one chakra might be more dominant than the others, and that might alter the way you perceive something. So if you're visually dominant, you might tend to look at your world visually before auditory. But if one chakra, let's say if the throat chakra is more dominant, it's like saying right or left-handed. There's nothing wrong with your non-dominant hand, but if the throat chakra has its own unique psychic ability, and if it's more prominent than the others are working fine, but you tend to use the throat chakra more, that one has an ability called telepathy, which means to know what is the character of a person, place, or thing. So my theory is we all have one chakra that's more dominant than the rest, and that we tend to perceive life through that dominant chakra, which affects our mission statement, our karma, our core beliefs, you know, our interactions, our perceptions, our reactions. And so this led to the writing of a couple of books, you know, The Eye of the Lotus and I Can Relate, and probably more books down the line as I continue to put forth these teachings as I understand it. And I'm the first one to say to you, these are my theories, these are my opinions, because we take one giant step backwards and say, this is how I'm perceiving the chakras. This is my opinion of how they work. But Anna Dia Judith, Carolyn Mace, and a host of others You know, when Deirdre's doing her practice, she may look at the chakras because she has her own life course, mission, statement, perspective, and she might observe something different. So this gives us a context to understand that the chakras are not just organs, that they are conduits of consciousness that unite the higher astral self with the physical body. Two sides of the same coin.
Ken,
You got some noise in the background there?
yeah.
Oh, Ken,
Hello.
you got noise in the background there?
No, it's Lori. We need to get her to mute her mic. That's okay. You might not know how. Richard, can you mute Lori's mic?
I can try. Why don't you talk for a minute while I make it look like I'm doing something important?
So every single one of our chakras has a characteristic that you know, is a strength or a weakness. And as Richard was saying, it's not something that is good or bad. It's something that helps us propel us forward into what we are here to represent and to do at this moment in time. And so when we come into this world, we are one main chakra dominant. I have students who see individuals sometimes having more than one dominant chakra, but on a whole, we have one chakra that is dominant, and that is your key characteristics of who you are meant to be in this lifetime. And so when we look at it, starting from the second chakra, we see the person who is the creationist, the person who can bring forth something from nothing. And 40% of the people that I run into are basically in that chakra, are developing life through their perceptions of being a creationist. And then when we move into the solar plexus, this person is usually one who is a charismatic leader. And you know, they're the ones that are able to share that information and to, oh, there we go, share that information and whatnot as a leader. And you know, only about 28% of people are actually in that population. And we move into the heart chakra, or the one who is the empath. And, you know, which is really good because they have that innate ability to show empathy and symmetry. And it's really cool because, you know, even though I'm seeing more and more people heart-centered or heart chakra-centered, usually only about 4% of the population is of that dominant chakra. And then we move into the throat, or the fifth chakra, which is more of the comprehender, the teacher, telepathy, the one that can pull in that higher level of understanding and be able to often share it in ways that people can easily understand. And you know, it's interesting because I often pull people who are second chakra into my life because, of course, they're the creationists and the visionaries. And through my communication, they help me show a better way to explain things. So I love working with second chakra individuals. And those people are usually about 28% of the population. And then, of course, we move into the third eye, or the brow chakra, the sixth chakra, and that's the real prophet. You know, the clairessence, they just know, they just understand what is. It's
clairsentience.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I often go there. I really do. And then, of course, the crown chakra is that whole opening to a complete understanding and, in my perception, a union with whatever divine source is to you. So it's that understanding, that mystical doorway, that opening into higher dimensions, and
So
that's how I see them.
How do we make this more organic for the person who is watching this video? Someone who really wants to understand how the chakras work, who really wants to know how to develop their intuitive powers, how they work. And so there's many ways you can do it. We have chakra breathing exercises, which are yours simply for contacting us. And I think I'm going to take you through a very short process with one of the breathing exercises here. We have integrative chakra therapy, where we start new groups of students every year in Calgary, Canada, and in San Diego. In fact, we have a new group starting here March 9th and 10th of this year, and then again in the fall. There are different workshops you can take, not just with us, but there are many. And so the way to go to a workshop, is to look at the ad and then trust what you feel. There's a big difference between what you know and what you feel. If I said to the average person, "Do you love your mother?" most people would say, "Well, yes, of course." And if I said, "Well, how do you know that?" they'd look at me like I asked a silly question. And yet it's not the type of knowing that is intellectual. It is what is called a qualitative state. It can't be quantified. Love cannot be quantified, but you can feel. So I told the group yesterday, I said, one of the best ways to listen to this lecture is to look into your feelings. When someone asks you, you go home and you had this hour-and-a-half lecture with Dr. J, and someone says, "Well, what was the lecture about?" And you go, or someone says to you, "So, what is a chakra anyway?" And you go, So think of it as the centers of consciousness. But for you, the person, to get the most out of it, to realize that your consciousness, somebody's speaker is speeding back into my computer, is for you to realize that the chakras are centers of consciousness. And they're on 24/7. And they are your access to higher parts of yourself. I think I'm going to have to go onto a headset because somebody's giving me feedback here.
It's Lori's microphone. It keeps popping up. I've got the chats open here, and I've sent her a message if she can mute it. But there we go. I think she has. Yay! All right, there you go, Richard. Lori has muted her microphone. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Oh, we hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got a question for you now.
Okay.
We always have something come up when we do a show. When we used to have our producer behind the scenes, he would edit out all these little glitches for us. But live is so much better.
Yeah. Well, let's go through a process here. Okay. So what I want to do is take us through a short little process. And these chakra breathing exercises are yours for the asking. Just email us at info@lightnews.org. info@lightnews.org. So the heart chakra is here. And the way this works is by breathing in 4 parts. An in-breath, hold, out-breath, hold. And the reason for this is this helps balance and strengthen the chakra centers. And so this is an exercise where you would typically do 5 breaths per chakra, starting at the root and then going up to the crown. So that'd be 35 breaths. So what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on one chakra. Okay? We're going to focus on the heart. So I'm going to walk you through this. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in. And on breathe in, we're going to think of this word purity. And we're going to be focusing on the area of our heart. Then we hold. Then as we breathe out, we're going to think, I am pure. So on the in-breath, you're focusing on your heart chakra and you're thinking purity. Hold. Then on the out-breath, you're thinking, I am pure. And then hold. Okay, so that's an entire breath cycle, these 4 parts. Okay, now if you cannot do it exactly in the cadence that I'm giving it, that's fine. There's no penalty. Just stay along with me. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Focus on the heart chakra. Here we go. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. Hold. Breath in, purity. Hold. I am pure. Breath out. Hold. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. Hold. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. Hold. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. Hold. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. Hold. Last one. Breath in, purity. Hold. Breath out. I am pure. And resume your normal breathing and sit quietly for a few moments to absorb and integrate that wonderful feeling of having strengthened and balanced your heart chakra. This exercise was given to me by one of my teachers. And it's a very good exercise to do in the morning and in the evening for balancing all 7 chakras. As I said before, it's yours free from us. Just simply go to the website or email us at info@lightnews.org. We're happy to send it to you. If you get lightheaded doing this exercise, stop.
And slow down. Often we breathe in and out too quickly.
And open your eyes. And if you continue to get lightheaded, stop and put the exercise away for a couple days and then begin again and approach this gradually. When a person is doing spiritual work, it's always advisable to go in a gradual manner. It's like going up a ladder. It's always advisable to go one step at a time and not to skip any steps. It's understandable. We live in an age where the rapidity by which things are unfolding is so fast that a lot of times we feel left behind. We feel we don't know enough, we haven't done enough, we haven't accomplished enough, we're not smart enough. You know, if you think about it, if you already live in a oneness, there's no place to go because you're already there. There's nothing to find because nothing's lost. That's why Osho, a wonderful sage, said, stop worrying about becoming something. You already are. You want an example? A beautiful rose. When the rose is a bare root, is it still a rose? When it puts forth a little sprig and then a few leaves and then a bud, is it still a rose? When it begins to bloom fully, is it not always a rose? It's in your nature to bloom. This is why Paramahansa Yogananda said, one cannot be any closer to God than you already are, but you can reveal that closeness. So when you're doing exercises like this, when you're doing your spiritual connection and awareness, what you're really doing is blooming. But the bloom is ceaseless. Ceaseless. You can always bloom. You can always open. You can always open. And so use this video as a way to help you nurture the intimate parts of yourself that already know the inner answers. All teachers ever really do is point you to within yourself, because that's where all the answers are. I know you've heard this a million times, but it doesn't change its truth. So these exercises, yes, they're very simple. They are rooted towards a beginning form of this method. We do have a chakra breathing exercise that is a little bit more advanced than this, not more stringent. It's just that some of the words are different. Some of the phraseology is different, but the 4-part breathing is the same. If you'd like both, we're happy to send you that too. All you have to do is ask, and it's yours for free.
And, you know, even though we've showed you just the one right now, the other key part to any type of energy work or energy medicine is, of course, clearing and cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what you do, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own self-care, self-being, and the person on the table is also responsible for their own self-care. And
well, but you're talking in terms of healing work. When you just said person on the table, you might have lost some of our viewers.
Well, yes. But we did talk a little bit earlier about how you do your subtle energy balancing.
Integrative chakra therapy. It's hard for Deirdre and I not to slip into the role of instructor.
But it's important to know that when you're talking about the chakras and you are working with the chakras, even on yourself, you know, the empath often feels everybody else's stuff.
Yeah.
And so the clearing is really important. And that's an aspect of partly being an empath, is learning to set your own boundaries and emotional boundaries. So it is part of understanding what the chakra is. So we can also send you any clearing exercises as well. And that's what I wanted to emphasize, is that, you know, we all have so much going on in our lives that 5 minutes of meditation, even if it's just doing that breath work that Richard has just shown you, that is a type of meditation. Mm-hmm. And that helps you become centered and grounded into your day and into the moment. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I was going with that, Richard.
So looking at the image on the lower left, when we have higher levels of awareness, our perception changes. When our perception changes, we use our will to have a different reaction. So when a person works with their chakra centers to awaken them, to stimulate them through prayer, meditation, through kindness, harmlessness, compassion, but when you're directing your focus on the chakras, as in those breathing exercises, now you're directly stimulating the chakra. And the chakras will respond, and as they awaken what the yogis call the true self, or you have a higher level of experience that is beyond space and time. And I don't mean you space out. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that if you perceive something intellectually, you're going to use your will to make a reaction. And with a higher state of awareness, if you know from a higher level, it changes your perception. This is why Einstein said a problem cannot be solved on the level with which it was created. So this is why it is in your interests to increase your spiritual practices in whatever way you're led to. There's a million ways to work safely to stimulate the chakras to awaken. But it does take faith, and it does take some form of chakra exercise. So if you look at the image on the lower right, you see this shape that looks like a donut. This is called a toroid, T-O-R-O-I-D, or torus, T-O-R-U-S. And that is simply the name of the donut shape. This is what I see when I look at a chakra, but it happens to be one of the most basic fundamental shapes or quantums of energy in the universe. What's a very common example of a toroidal energy field? You
Two
wouldn't
words,
believe
donut.
it. A tornado. A tornado. Because a tornado is made up entirely of its environment and yet is distinct within it. And if you look at the shape of a tornado going like this, right? That's a toroidal energy field. And so this exists on all levels of creation, atomic to galactic. So at the center of every chakra, mind you, 7 chakras lined up and down the column of the spine, is where the higher dimensions beyond time and space and the physical dimension meet. And that little pink dot in the middle has a word in it called now. That is what we perceive as now. So how long is now? 1/10 of a second, a 20th of a second? When is now? And there's humor there that we show our students. But the point being, this is what some people call the God spot. It's what some people call the 0 point. Would you believe there's even a branch of physics called 0 point physics that's based on this very same phenomenon here? So imagine you have 7 chakras that have this 0 point or this now spot where the higher and physical dimensions are meeting at the same moment. And as you increase your spiritual practices, as you use your intuitive abilities and you cultivate them, you become more aware on different levels of your own limiting belief systems, fears, doubts, your interactions with the constellation of relationships, whether it's parental, familial, social, work, and so forth. You start to understand more of what the yogis call the true self, you know, who you really are. And you start to understand more about what this lifetime is about for you, you know, what you came to do and what you came to learn. So it's not that all of a sudden you become spiritual. It just means that you become more awakened to the true nature of who you really are. And so it's good to embrace science that has verified that chakras and meridians and non-locality exists. It's good to embrace faith and intuition that also exists, and to keep the physical and the non-physical, to keep the science and the intuitive in a perfect state of balance. When students come to us for teachings, one of the first things we say is, trust what you feel, then apply what you know. Trust what you feel, then apply what you know. And then in this way, both faculties are balanced. Why is it hard? Because your higher sense perceptions don't work the same way as the 5 senses. So sometimes for us, we feel confused, or it's awkward, or a little bit frustrating, because our higher sense perceptions tell us one thing, then our physical eyes and ears tell us something else, and we think, did I make a mistake? Was this wrong? So when we have people come to us for sessions, like Deirdre and I both are spiritual counselors, and we have people we work with in person and, you know, over the internet, and people will say, how could you possibly know that? Especially when it's a distance session through Zoom or by phone. And yet distance is no factor in this work, because you are a spirit and physical in the same moment. Your chakras are beyond space and time. Everybody has 7 chakras. All chakras are on 24/7. Every intuitive faculty is working. So Deirdre and I have developed our faculties. And in this way, we can help people to strengthen and self-empower their lives so they can see more deeply into why things work the way they do. How do they respond the way they do, and what's behind that response, and why do they see the things that they do? And this extends into energy medicine too. I have many clients who've given up some very serious problems, and I emphasize that basically I'm not doing the healing. I'm only a conduit for the healing to flow through, and that person is basically just healing themselves. And yet these technologies that I'm talking about, nothing new. Nothing new. Ancient cultures knew about this thousands of years ago. But as a mass global human society, we are now waking up to the truth of our being. And that's part of why you see so much chaos and cacophony in the world, because it's forcing us to make better choices. It's forcing us to look around and say, well, that's not working, so what is? So then we create a Deirdre, or we create a Dr. J to come into your life, or we create a Light News, or we create integrative chakra therapy. But that's our creation in order to help us to empower the truth of our spiritual and physical being as one.
I like to call it, though, a co-creative conscious collaboration.
Yes, indeed.
Because it's not just you, it's not just me, it's everyone together.
Yep. It's us, US, unified in spirit.
And, well, to get heavy and way out there,
here it comes.
We are one, right? We are all energetically connected. And so there's no reason why you can't be what you already are on such a magnificent level. Sorry.
Exactly.
I just have to throw that in there. Because people don't realize. Pardon?
Be who you are.
Exactly. Be who you are.
Well, that's why Gandhi didn't say become the change you seek. He said be the change you seek in the world. Or in the old days, we used to say, if you want to change your boss, change yourself.
Well, and that's one thing that I have learned through teaching your work, but also in practicing your work. The more that I develop myself, the more that I see individuals around me grow in such a phenomenal way. And sometimes I think, okay, this is kind of creepy because I know I've just gone through that and now you're going through it, and why? But it's a lot of fun at the same time.
And gee, Ken, whose dogs could that be?
And dogs.
And so, we really hope that, these Light News radio programs are helpful to you. We do record them. We do put them on YouTube for your pleasure, but also for your education so that you can apply what's on here. We are a global resource. And Light News is growing very quickly. We're very pleased to respond to the demand for us. And so, if you have questions or if you have a topic that you would like us to talk about, please do get a hold of us. Our website is www.lightnews.org, lightnews.org. And we are most happy to respond. So, Deirdre, we have about 7 minutes left to our hour. Is there anything you'd like to bring up or mention?
Well, I would like to say that Dr. Jalisic is working on many different avenues to bring you this information. And part of that is developing some courses that will be live through Zoom, such as this, and also working behind the scenes on webinars and things like that. So please watch our calendar of events at www.lightnews.org for updates on that. And he'll be he's in the US right now, and he will be flying to Canada for the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of March. And I invite you to contact us at info@lightnews.org or 877-242-5721 to book a flower reading, which is where Dr. Jalisic really proves that he's connected to everything out there and shows you just how connected we all are. And reading a flower on a level of he has no idea whose flowers they are, or a past life workshop where he can sit with a group of 12 people and talk to them about what aspects from past lives they have brought forward into this lifetime to help them grow, and or private sessions. And you don't just relate these to Canada or the US. Dr. Jalisic can use Zoom and pretty much do any of those workshops wherever in the world.
There was a woman from Melbourne, Australia, was in Rishikesh, India, and she was in a bookstore, and one of my books fell into her lap. So she read it on the way back to Melbourne. And so then she read the other book, I Can Relate. Then she called me for a session, on Zoom. And she was stunned that, how I could read her. But, the book really resonated with her. So, we have clients all over the planet. Distance is no factor when doing this work. So if you have any interest in a session with me, I'm happy to help you. Just get a hold of us at our website, and you can book it right there.
And watch for other things coming up, both in the US, San Diego, Canada, and don't make it that just he's in San Diego or Calgary. If there's a large enough calling, Dr. Jelsich will come to a city near you.
Yes, which I have. In fact, I'll be in Japan the earliest part of April. They have a huge cherry festival, and my teacher's place, the shrine where he was head priest, I am going to be going there to do some service work.
And I'll be practicing ICT with individuals in Alberta for another month and a half, and then I will be working on bringing ICT to British Columbia on Vancouver Island.
Yep, we are growing, and we have qualified instructors now in Calgary, now in Vancouver Island, and we're working on that here in the States, and so we are growing. So Ken, thank you so much for being online with us. Do you have any parting shots? Do you want to say?
One question I was going to ask you that
Yeah.
probably the people have is those 7 chakras are your main chakras, but you have chakras throughout your body, right?
Yeah, there's 21 minor chakras, but my theory is we have tens of thousands of little chakras, and we call those acupuncture points. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there is no solid matter. Everything is frequency, energy, and vibration, right? So we're just accessing higher parts of ourselves. And there's even a form of acupuncture called esoteric acupuncture that does work more with the chakras now than ever before, being put forth by some very enlightened acupuncturists. So, this knowledge of the truth of our spiritual nature is really growing. So, put on your skeptic hat, ask the really tough questions, but also be ready for the truth. So when you trust in faith, the truth within yourself, that's the real test. Are you willing to trust what your feelings are telling you? And that is how I do flower readings. Is how Deirdre does her private sessions and her counseling. That's how it's done. We must absolutely trust. And that is how you awaken the chakra centers. So I want to thank everybody so much for watching our program today. This one we did on Zoom, and I really like the format where you're able to see us. And we brought Ken on, who's a marvelous person himself. He's hosted us several times. And thank you so much, Ken. And we're going to keep doing this. Light News is usually every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific, although, like I said, the programs are loaded up onto the Light News Institute fan page on YouTube. So, and of course, a whole host of things like free energy work twice a month in San Diego and Calgary, and that's going to be expanding too. I can feel that. So again, thank you for listening to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. I'm your host, Dr. J, and my amazing co-host is Deirdre Layton. And of course, as always, may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever-present, ever-constant guide of your every intention, of your every thought, and of your every action. And so it is, and so it shall be. It is done. Stay attuned, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us today. Be blessed.